They say money screams, but wealth whispers. Sterling Cross, the ruthless CEO of Cross Industries, didn't just scream, he roared. He walked into the gala thinking he owned the world, treating people like furniture. He thought the tired waitress in the corner was nothing more than a servant, invisible and uneducated. He thought he could insult her dignity in a language she'd never understand, just to impress his foreign investors. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Because that waitress wasn't just holding a tray of champagne. She was holding a secret that could destroy his entire empire. And when she finally opened her mouth, the silence in the room was deafening. Watch closely, because you are about to witness the most satisfying takedown in corporate history. The grand ballroom of the Hotel Pierre in Manhattan smelled of expensive perfume, old money, and desperation. It was the annual Future of Tech charity gala, a black-tie event where a ticket cost more than most people earned in a year. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling, casting a golden glow over the sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. Waiters moved through the crowd like ghosts dressed in crisp white button-downs and black vests balancing silver trays laden with champagne flutes and truffle-infused hors d'oeuvres. They were instructed to be seen, not heard, to be present but invisible. Sarah Bennett was good at being invisible. She adjusted the heavy tray on her left shoulder, wincing slightly. Her feet, encased in cheap black non-slip shoes, were throbbing. She had been on her feet for 10 hours straight, pulling a double shift because her rent was overdue, and her mother's medical bills were piling up on the kitchen counter like a snowdrift. "Champagne, sir?" Sarah asked softly, extending the tray toward a group of men, laughing near the ice sculpture. One of them, a heavy-set man with a flushed face, took a glass without looking at her. He didn't say thank you. He didn't even nod. To him, Sarah was just a floating hand delivering alcohol. She retracted the tray and moved on, her expression neutral. She had practiced this face in the mirror, the mask of the perfect servant. Unbothered, blank. But behind her hazel eyes, a sharp, analytical mind was whirring. As she wove through the crowd, she wasn't just avoiding elbows and spilling drinks. She was listening. She heard the CFO of a major logistics company whispering about an upcoming merger that hadn't been announced yet. She heard a senator discussing a scandal he was paying to bury. Sarah catalogued it all. It was a habit from a life she had left behind 5 years ago, a life that felt like a fever dream now. "Move it," a sharp voice snapped from behind her. Sarah pivoted gracefully, narrowly, avoiding a collision. Standing there was a man who sucked the oxygen out of every room he entered. Sterling Cross. He was tall, with the kind of sharp, predatory handsomeness that looked good on magazine covers, but terrifying in person. His tuxedo was bespoke, cut to accentuate his broad shoulders. He was the CEO of Cross Industries, a tech conglomerate that was currently eating up smaller companies across the globe. He was also the man who had ruined her father. Sarah's grip on the silver tray tightened until her knuckles turned white. She lowered her head immediately, letting her bangs fall over her eyes. "My apologies, Mr. Cross." Sterling didn't even look at her face. He looked at her shoulder, where the edge of her tray had come dangerously close to his suit. He brushed his sleeve dramatically, as if her proximity had contaminated him. "Watch where you're going." He sneered, his voice loud enough to attract the attention of the surrounding sycophants. "If you spill anything on this suit, it would take you 3 lifetimes of waiting tables to pay for the dry cleaning." A few people chuckled. It was a cruel, nervous sound. Everyone wanted to be on Sterling Cross's good side, even if it meant laughing at the humiliation of a service worker. "It won't happen again, sir." Sarah said, her voice steady. She didn't apologize profusely. She didn't cry. She just stated a fact. Sterling paused. He wasn't used to steadiness. He was used to fear. He finally looked at her face, really looked at her, searching for the crack in her armor. "You look familiar," he muttered, narrowing his eyes. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. If he recognized her, if he realized that Sarah, the waitress, was actually Isabella Rutherford, the daughter of the man he had betrayed and driven to an early grave, everything would be over. Her plan, her safety, her future. "I've served you before, sir." Sarah lied smoothly, keeping her eyes on his tie knot. "At the midwinter gala last month." Sterling scoffed, losing interest instantly. "Right, you all look the same. Go get me a sparkling water, with lime, and don't take an hour." "Yes, sir." Sarah turned and walked away, her back straight. She could feel his eyes on her for a second longer before he turned back to his adoring crowd. "Hard to get good help these days," Sterling announced loudly. "It's a lack of ambition. That's the problem with the lower class. They're content with mediocrity." Sarah reached the service station and set the tray down with a clatter. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, simmering rage. "You okay, Sarah?" It was Liam, the bartender. He was a sweet kid, 22, and aspiring to be an actor. He looked at her with concern. "Cross is a nightmare. He made the coat check girl cry earlier because she couldn't find his scarf fast enough. He wasn't even wearing a scarf." Sarah took a deep breath, smoothing her apron. "I'm fine, Liam. Just another night. You need a break." "No." Sarah said, her eyes darkening as she looked back out at the ballroom floor. "I need to be out there." Because tonight wasn't just any gala. Tonight, Sterling Cross was meeting with the Zhang delegation, a group of ultra-wealthy investors from Shanghai who were looking to pour $4 billion into an American tech firm. Sterling was desperate for that money. His company's stock was inflated. His debts were hidden in shell companies, and without this injection of capital, Cross Industries would collapse within the quarter. Sarah knew this because she had spent the last 3 years hacking into the back doors of the company her father built. She grabbed a fresh glass of sparkling water with lime. "Order up for table 1, she said. "I'm taking it." "Be careful," Liam warned. "He's in a mood." "So am I," Sarah whispered to herself. She walked back into the lion's den. Sterling was now standing near the private alcove reserved for VIP negotiations. He was flanked by his vice president, a slimy man named Arthur Pence, and his head of security. Approaching them were 3 men in impeccable dark suits. The Zhang delegation. Mr. Zhang, the patriarch of the family, walked in the center. He was an older man with silver hair and a face carved from granite. He walked with a cane, but he didn't lean on it. He used it like a scepter. Sarah slowed her pace, blending into the periphery, near a large potted fern. She needed to be close. She needed to hear every word. Sterling stepped forward, a wide, fake smile plastering his face. He extended a hand. "Mr. Zhang. A pleasure. Welcome to New York. I trust your flight was comfortable." He spoke in English. Mr. Zhang looked at his translator, a young woman with glasses who quickly whispered the translation. Mr. Zhang nodded and replied in Mandarin. The translator spoke up. "Mr. Zhang thanks you for the reception. He is eager to discuss the terms of the partnership." "Excellent, excellent," Sterling beamed. "Please sit. Let's get you some drinks." He snapped his fingers without looking. "You water. Now!" Sarah stepped forward immediately, placing the sparkling water in front of Sterling and offering a tray of fresh drinks to the Chinese delegation. As she leaned in to place a glass of tea in front of Mr. Zhang, Sterling looked at Arthur Pence. "Look at them," Sterling said, dropping his voice slightly, but not enough. He assumed the language barrier was a soundproof wall. "Nodding like bobbleheads. They have no idea we're about to gut their investment structure." Sarah froze for a fraction of a second. Her hand hovered over the saucer. Sterling continued grinning at Mr. Zhang while speaking to Arthur. "We get them to sign the letter of intent tonight. Once the funds transfer, we divert the capital to cover the losses in the R&D sector. By the time they realize they don't have voting rights, it'll be too late to pull out." Arthur chuckled nervously. "Are you sure they don't speak English, Sterling?" "Positive." Sterling scoffed. "Zhang is old school. He refuses to learn it. And the translator I bought her off yesterday. She's translating exactly what I tell her to translate." Sarah's blood ran cold. It was fraud. Pure, unadulterated fraud on a massive scale. She placed the tea down gently. Mr. Zhang looked up at her. For a brief moment their eyes met. He saw a waitress. She saw the man who was about to be robbed. "Thank you," the translator said in English to Sarah. "You can go now." Sterling waved Sarah away, as if she were a fly. "Actually, stay nearby. I might need to wipe my hands." He laughed at his own joke. Then, looking directly at Mr. Zhang, Sterling smiled warmly and said in English, "We have the utmost respect for your family's legacy." But then he leaned toward Arthur and switched to Mandarin. It was broken, heavily accented Mandarin, something he must have practiced phonetically just to show off to his VP, or perhaps he thought it made him sound cultured. "Zhegelao tu zikan kilai hen chun," Sterling said in Mandarin. Sarah stopped breathing. He had just said, "This old man looks very stupid." He had insulted a billionaire investor to his face, in his own language, banking entirely on the fact that his pronunciation was so bad and the context so unexpected that Mr. Zhang wouldn't catch it, or that he simply believed no one else was listening. The translator stiffened. She had clearly heard it. She looked at Sterling, terror in her eyes. She had been bribed to mistranslate the business deal, but she hadn't signed up for insults. She stayed silent, looking down at her notebook. Mr. Zhang's expression didn't change. He simply took a sip of his tea. Sterling turned to Sarah, noticing she hadn't vanished yet. He was high on adrenaline and arrogance. He wanted to assert dominance over everyone in his vicinity. He looked at Sarah, then looked at Mr. Zhang, and decided to make a joke. He pointed a manicured finger at Sarah. In Mandarin, he said to Mr. Zhang, "Tashiwode Nuli." "She is my slave." He laughed, turning to Arthur. "I told him she's my dedicated server. It sounds better." But he hadn't used the word for server. He had used the word for slave. The air in the alcove seemed to drop 20 degrees. Sarah stood there, the empty silver tray pressed against her stomach. She looked at Sterling Cross, a man who had stolen her father's patents, drove her family into bankruptcy, and now stood there, mocking her in a language he butchered with every syllable. She had spent 4 years in Beijing, studying international business and linguistics, before her life fell apart. She spoke Mandarin better than she spoke French. She dreamt in it. Sterling turned to her, his face twisting into a sneer. "Why are you still standing there? Did you not hear me? I said get lost." He turned back to Mr. Zhang, ready to close the fraudulent deal. Sarah didn't move. She set the tray down on a side table. The metal clanged loudly against the wood. The sound cut through the conversation. Sterling whipped his head around. "Excuse me. Are you deaf? I'm going to have you fired. I'm going to ensure you never work in this city again." Sarah took one step forward. She lifted her chin. The submissive waitress posture evaporated. Her shoulders squared. Her height seemed to increase by 2 inches. She looked Sterling Cross dead in the eye, and then she opened her mouth. The silence that followed the clatter of the tray was heavy, but Sterling broke it almost immediately. He stood up, his face reddening with a mix of embarrassment and fury. "Security!" Sterling barked, waving a hand toward the perimeter of the room. "Get this incompetent woman out of my sight. She's disrupting a $1 billion negotiation." Arthur Pence, the VP, looked nervous. "Sterling, calm down. Let's just—" "No," Sterling hissed, adjusting his cufflinks aggressively. "This is the problem with these people. You give them a uniform, and they think they have a place at the table." He turned his glare on Sarah. "Do you know how much this suit costs? It's worth more than your life. Get out." Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't look at the approaching security guards. She looked past Sterling directly at Mr. Zhang. The elderly investor was watching the scene with heavy-lidded curiosity. His teacup paused halfway to his mouth. "Mr. Cross," Sarah said. Her voice was no longer the soft, subservient whisper of a servant. It was projected resonant and calm. It carried the timbre of a boardroom executive. "You seem to be under a few misconceptions." Sterling blinked, taken aback by her tone. "Excuse me. First," Sarah continued, her diction crisp, "that suit is a Brioni Vanquish 2. It retails for about $43,000. It is expensive, certainly, but it is hardly worth a human life, unless, of course, you value life very cheaply." A few people at the nearby tables turned their heads. The spectacle was beginning. "You insolent little—" Sterling stepped forward, his hand raising as if to point a finger in her face. "Second," Sarah interrupted him, her voice gathering strength, "you believe that because I am wearing this apron I am deaf to your insults. And third—" She paused, letting the tension coil tight like a spring. "You seem to believe that your pronunciation of Mandarin is intelligible. It is not." The room went dead silent. Even the string quartet in the corner seemed to dampen their sound. Sterling laughed. It was a loud, incredulous bark. "What you think? Because you learned ni hao from a takeout menu, you can lecture me." He turned to the Chinese delegation, grinning widely, trying to regain control of the room by mocking her. "Look at this. The help is trying to speak." He looked at the translator. "Tell Mr. Zhang that this woman is mentally unstable and we are removing her." The translator opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was staring at Sarah. Sarah shifted her gaze to Mr. Zhang. She clasped her hands in front of her, not in servitude, but in the traditional sign of respect. Her posture shifted, adopting the subtle, respectful inclination of the head used in formal Chinese business etiquette. When she spoke again, it wasn't English. "Zhang Xiansheng." Sarah began her Mandarin flawless, her tones precise and elegant. It flowed like water, a stark contrast to Sterling's jagged, clumsy attempt earlier. "Qing Yuan Liang, wo de Mao Mei." "Please forgive my presumption." Sterling froze. His smile faltered. He looked at Arthur, then back at Sarah. He didn't understand what she was saying, but he understood the tone. It was the tone of an equal. Sarah continued, her eyes locked on the investor. "The man standing before you, Mr. Cross, has just insulted you. He called you stupid to your home face, though his tones were so poor, you may have mistaken it for a greeting. Furthermore, he referred to me as his slave, to amuse his associate." Mr. Zhang slowly set his teacup down. The clink of china on the saucer echoed. He looked at Sterling Cross, his expression unreadable. Sterling panic laughed. "What is she saying? What is that gibberish?" He looked at his hired translator. "What did she say?" The translator looked at the floor, terrified. She is apologizing for the interruption, Mr. Cross." Sarah switched back to English, instantly cutting the translator off. "Don't lie for him, Jessica. It won't save your career when the SEC investigates this merger," the translator gasped, clutching her notebook. Sterling's face went purple. "You listen to me, you nobody. I don't know who you think you are, but I will ruin you. I will have you arrested for corporate espionage. Security, grab her." Two burly security guards in dark suits finally reached the group. One of them reached out to grab Sarah's arm. "Do not touch her." The voice was low, gravelly, and commanded absolute authority. It didn't come from Sterling. It came from Mr. Zhang. The elderly man spoke in English. It was heavily accented, slow, but perfectly understandable. The security guard froze his hand inches from Sarah's bicep. Sterling looked at Mr. Zhang, his mouth falling open. "Mr. Zhang, you speak English." "I speak enough," Mr. Zhang said, standing up slowly. He leaned on his cane, his dark eyes boring into Sterling. "Enough to know when a man has no honor." Sterling stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "Sir, please, this woman is a plant. She's a disgruntled former employee, or a spy from a competitor. You can't listen to a waitress over a CEO." Mr. Zhang ignored him. He turned his body fully toward Sarah. He studied her face, looking past the cheap uniform. "Your tones are Beijing dialect," Mr. Zhang said in English. "Very pure. Where did you learn?" "I lived in the Chaoyang district for 4 years, sir," Sarah replied respectfully in English. "I studied under Professor Wei at Tsinghua University." Mr. Zhang's eyebrows raised. "Professor Wei is a difficult man to please." "He is," Sarah allowed a small, genuine smile. "He taught me that in business, as in language, clarity is everything, and that silence often speaks louder than noise." "Indeed," Mr. Zhang nodded. He gestured to the empty chair next to him, the chair reserved for the CFO of Cross Industries. "Please, sit." The gasp that went through the room was audible. A billionaire investor had just invited a waitress to sit at the VIP table while the host, Sterling Cross, was left standing. "Mr. Zhang," Sterling protested, his voice cracking. "This is preposterous. She serves drinks. She doesn't know the first thing about high-level equity structuring." Sarah didn't sit, not yet. She turned to Sterling, her expression hardening into diamond. "Actually, Sterling," she said, using his first name for the first time. It sounded like a slap. "I know quite a bit about equity structuring. Specifically, I know about the shell companies in the Cayman Islands you're using to hide the $300 million of debt Cross Industries is currently carrying." The color drained from Sterling's face so fast he looked like a corpse. That's a lie. That's libel." "Is it?" Sarah asked. She reached into her apron pocket. Everyone expected her to pull out a notepad or a pen. Instead, she pulled out a small, sleek USB drive. "The files on this drive," Sarah said, holding it up so the light caught the silver casing, "contain the unedited ledgers of Cross Industries for the last 5 fiscal years. They show the diversion of funds from the pension plan to cover your personal real estate losses. They show the falsified R&D reports." She turned back to Mr. Zhang. "And most importantly, Mr. Zhang, they show that the technology Mr. Cross is trying to sell you, the quantum battery prototype, doesn't belong to him. She switched back to English for the room to hear. It belongs to Rutherford Dynamics, the company he hostilely took over 5 years ago before dismantling it and stealing the patents. Sterling looked like he was going to vomit. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice trembling with genuine fear. Sarah reached up and pulled the hair tie from her hair. Her dark locks cascaded down her shoulders, framing a face that many of the older investors suddenly recognized. "My name is not Sarah Jenkins," she said clearly. "My name is Isabella Rutherford, and I'm here to take back what you stole." The name Rutherford hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. For the older guests in the room, the name summoned memories of a different era in tech, an era of innovation before predatory acquisitions became the norm. James Rutherford had been a visionary, a man who built things to last. Sterling Cross was the man who stripped those things for parts. Sterling's shock was brief, quickly replaced by a sneering, defensive malice. He straightened his jacket, laughing, shaking his head as he addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please." Sterling boomed his voice, regaining that practiced boardroom smoothness. "I apologize for this theatric display. This is clearly a mental health episode. Isabella Rutherford disappeared 5 years ago after her father drank his company into the ground. It's tragic, really, to see her reduced to this hallucinations of grandeur while serving hors d'oeuvres." He turned to his head of security, a man named Marcus, with a neck as thick as a tree stump. "Marcus, remove her. Gently if you can. But remove her." Marcus stepped forward, his hand reaching for Isabella's shoulder. "If you touch me," Isabella said, her voice dropping an octave, "you will be named as a co-conspirator in the RICO case that the Southern District of New York is currently building against Cross Industries." Marcus hesitated. His hand hovered in mid-air. The mention of a RICO case organized crime charges was specific enough to make any hired muscle pause. Sterling rolled his eyes. "Don't listen to her. She's bluffing. She's a waitress." "Am I?" Isabella challenged. She didn't look at Sterling. She looked at the tablet sitting on the table in front of Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang asked him about the thermal runaway variants in the quantum battery prototype. Sterling's face twitched. It was a micro-expression of pure terror gone in an instant, but Isabella saw it. "The thermal runaway," Isabella repeated, stepping closer to the table. "My father solved the energy density problem, but he hadn't fixed the cooling regulation yet. When you seized his servers in the hostile takeover, you took the unfinished blueprints. You rushed it to production to impress these investors. But you didn't fix the flaw, did you?" She turned to the crowd, her voice ringing out. "If Mr. Zhang signs that deal tonight, he is buying a battery that explodes if it charges past 80% capacity." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. The future of tech gala suddenly felt like a crime scene. "Lies!" Sterling screamed, abandoning his composure. "She is lying. The prototype is stable. We have safety certifications." "Signed by who?" Isabella shot back instantly. "Dr. Aris Thorne. The man you put on your payroll 3 weeks after he lost his license for falsifying safety data in the automotive sector." Sterling looked like he had been punched in the gut. He stared at her, mouth agape. How do you know that I told you?" Isabella said, her eyes cold. "I'm the help. I'm invisible. I was refilling your water glass in the boardroom 3 weeks ago when you authorized Thorne's payment. I was clearing the plates when you joked that as long as it doesn't explode before the check clears, it's not our problem." The silence in the room was absolute. Every wealthy patron, every politician, every titan of industry was staring at Sterling Cross. They weren't looking at a CEO anymore. They were looking at a liability. Mr. Zhang picked up the USB drive Isabella had placed on the table. He turned it over in his fingers. He looked at his translator, then at Sterling. "Is this true?" Mr. Zhang asked in English. "Of course not." Sterling sputtered, sweat now visible on his upper lip. "She's a spy. She's probably working for Musk or Bezos. This is corporate sabotage." Mr. Zhang looked at Isabella. "Can you prove the thermal flaw?" Isabella nodded. "The simulation data is on that drive, folder 3 labeled Archive Rutherford. But you don't need the drive to see the truth. You just need to look at his phone." She pointed at Sterling's jacket pocket. 2 minutes ago, Isabella said, checking her cheap wristwatch. "I sent a remote command to the presentation prototype, sitting in the display case in the lobby. I overrode the safety limiters you installed to mask the heating issue." Sterling's eyes widened. "You did what?" "I initiated a stress test," Isabella said calmly. "If the battery is safe, as you claim, the cooling fans will spin up and it will stabilize. If it's the stolen unfinished Rutherford design, well, as if on cue, a loud pop, followed by the screech of a fire alarm, echoed from the grand lobby just outside the ballroom doors. Smoke began to drift into the ballroom entrance. Screams were heard from the foyer. Not screams of pain, but of panic. "Ladies and gentlemen," Isabella said, her voice cutting through the rising alarm. "That is the sound of Cross Industries' stock price hitting 0. Sterling Cross stood frozen. The fire alarm blared rhythmically, a pulsating beat to his destruction. He looked at the smoke, then back at the woman in the waitress uniform. The woman he had ignored. The woman he had insulted. He didn't see a waitress anymore. He saw a ghost, and she had just burned his house down. Pandemonium threatened to erupt, but the wealthy don't panic like normal people. They didn't run. They pulled out their phones. Within seconds, 100 cameras were trained on Sterling Cross and Isabella Rutherford. The live stream was already beginning. Sterling saw the phones. He saw his legacy disintegrating in 4K resolution. The desperation clawed at his throat. He needed to stop this. He needed to control the narrative. "It's a hack!" Sterling yelled, pointing a shaking finger at Isabella. "She hacked the system. She caused the malfunction. Terrorist. She's a domestic terrorist." He lunged toward the table, grabbing a steak knife from a place setting. It was a desperate, unthinking move, the reaction of a cornered animal. "Security, subdue her now!" Sterling screamed, brandishing the knife not at Isabella, but waving it wildly to keep people back. "She's dangerous!" Marcus, the head of security, stepped forward again, looking conflicted. But a paycheck is a paycheck. He moved toward Isabella, his hand reaching for his taser. "Ms. Rutherford, come with me," Marcus grunted, his voice low. "Don't make this ugly." Isabella didn't back down. She didn't run. She stood her ground, her eyes locking onto Marcus's. "Marcus, verify code 77 Alpha," she said quickly. Marcus froze mid-step. That was the emergency override code for the building's security system. A code only the highest level executives knew. "How do you—" "I told you," Isabella said, her voice intense. "I've been watching. I know you have a daughter in prep school, Marcus. I know Sterling hasn't paid your overtime in 3 months. And I know you don't want to go to prison for assaulting a whistleblower protected by the Federal Whistleblower Protection Act." Marcus stopped. He looked at Sterling, who was sweating and manic, holding a steak knife. Then he looked at Isabella, who stood with the dignity of a queen, despite her stained apron. Marcus holstered his taser. He took a step back. "I'm not touching her, Mr. Cross. I quit." "You what?" Sterling screeched. "I own you. I will destroy you." "You can't even pay the electric bill," Marcus muttered, crossing his arms. Sterling let out a guttural roar of frustration. He realized he had no muscle left. He had to do it himself. He threw the knife down. He wasn't a killer. He was a coward and rushed toward the table to grab the USB drive from Mr. Zhang. If he could destroy the evidence, maybe he could survive the night. "Give me that," Sterling snarled, reaching for the silver stick, but a cane moved faster than his hand. Thwack! Mr. Zhang brought his heavy ebony walking stick down hard on Sterling's wrist. Sterling howled in pain, clutching his hand to his chest. You assaulted me." "That's assault." Mr. Zhang stood up fully. He was an inch shorter than Sterling, but he loomed over him like a mountain. "In my country," Mr. Zhang said in perfect, unaccented English, dropping the facade completely. "We do not do business with thieves, and we certainly do not let them snatch things from our tables." Sterling stared at him, nursing his wrist. You speak English perfectly." "I studied at Oxford," Mr. Zhang said dryly. "The translator was for your benefit, to see if you were honest. You failed." He turned to Isabella and offered the USB drive to her. "Miss Rutherford, I believe this belongs to you." Isabella took the drive. Her fingers brushed the cool metal. It felt like victory. It felt like justice. "Thank you, Mr. Zhang," she said softly. "However," Sterling gasped, his face red and blotchy. "You have nothing. A fire in the lobby proves all... Nothing. A drive can be faked. You think the police will believe a waitress over a billionaire. I have lawyers who will bury you in litigation for the next 50 years. You'll be dead before this sees a courtroom." Isabella smiled. It was a terrifying smile. It wasn't happy. It was final. "You're assuming I'm going to the police, Sterling," she said. "What?" Sterling blinked. "The police are slow," Isabella said, walking around the table until she stood center stage. "The courts are buyable. You're right about that. Rich men like you always find a way to wriggle out of handcuffs." She reached into her apron again and pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen once. "That's why I didn't call the police," she said. "I called the sharks." Suddenly, the massive projection screen behind the stage, the one meant to display the Future of Tech logo, flickered. The logo vanished. In its place, a live stream of a stock market terminal appeared. It showed the ticker for Cross Industries, CRSS. The line was plummeting. It wasn't just falling. It was crashing vertically. "What is that?" Sterling whispered, horror dawning on him. 5 minutes ago," Isabella announced to the room. "I uploaded the entirety of the USB drive to 3 major financial news outlets and the short sellers forum on the dark web. I gave them the proof of the fraud, the debt, and the stolen patents." She pointed at the screen. "You aren't being arrested, Sterling. You're being liquidated. The market is reacting in real time. Your board of directors is getting notifications right now. Your creditors are calling in your loans." As if on cue, Sterling's phone in his pocket began to buzz. Then Arthur Pence's phone buzzed. Then the phones of half the room lit up. "It's a massacre," someone in the crowd whispered. "The stock is down 40% in 3 minutes." Sterling pulled his phone out. He stared at the screen. His hands were shaking so hard, he almost dropped it. "Margin call," he whispered. "They're issuing a margin call on my personal holdings. You leveraged your own shares to pay for this gala. Didn't you?" Isabella asked, stepping closer. "You bet everything on the Zhang deal saving you, but there is no deal, and now there is no stock." She leaned in close enough that only he could hear her. "My father died of a heart attack because he couldn't pay the legal fees to fight you. He died thinking he was a failure. Tonight you're going to lose more than money. You're going to lose your name. You will be the man who lost $1 billion in an hour because he was too arrogant to be kind to a waitress." Sterling looked up at her. His eyes were empty. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who realizes he is already dead. "You ruined me," he croaked. "No," Isabella said, turning her back on him. "I just served you what you ordered." She looked at the crowd, at the cameras, at the stunned faces of the elite. "My name is Isabella Rutherford," she said loudly. "And Rutherford Dynamics is open for business." She untied her apron, pulled it over her head, and let it drop to the floor at Sterling's feet. It landed with a soft thud, final and absolute. Isabella began to walk towards the exit. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. No one stopped her. No one dared. But Sterling wasn't done. He couldn't be done. His narcissism wouldn't let him end the night as the loser. "No," Sterling screamed, grabbing a heavy champagne bottle from a passing waiter's tray. "It doesn't end like this. You witch." He raised the bottle, his eyes wild, and charged at Isabella's turned back. "Look out!" Liam the bartender screamed from across the room. Isabella didn't turn around. She didn't have to. From the crowd, a figure blurred into motion. It wasn't a security guard. It was Mr. Zhang's quiet, unassuming personal assistant, the man who had stood silently in the shadows the entire night. He moved with the fluid lethality of a trained bodyguard. He intercepted Sterling mid-charge, grabbing the wrist, holding the bottle, and twisting it with a sickening crunch. Sterling screamed as he was spun around and slammed face first onto the carpet. The bottle shattered, spraying champagne and glass everywhere. The assistant pinned Sterling's arm behind his back, pressing a knee into his spine. Mr. Zhang watched the scene unimpressed. He tapped his cane on the floor. "Garbage," Mr. Zhang said in Mandarin. "Lengju, take out the trash." But as Sterling lay pinned on the floor, gasping for air, the double doors of the ballroom burst open. It wasn't the hotel security. It was a team of federal agents, their windbreakers emblazoned with the letters FBI. "Sterling Cross," the lead agent shouted, holding up a badge. "You are under arrest for securities fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny." Isabella stopped near the door. She looked back at the chaotic scene, Sterling, being cuffed, the flashbulbs exploding, the empire crumbling. She looked at the apron lying on the floor, the symbol of her invisibility. She had walked into that room a servant. She was walking out a CEO. But as she stepped into the cool night air of Manhattan, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She spun around defensive, ready for a fight. It was Arthur Pence Sterling's slimy vice president. He looked sweaty and nervous, but his eyes were calculating. "Isabella," he panted. "Wait, you won. Amazing. Truly. But you know the company is dead without the IP. You have the IP, but you don't have the infrastructure. You need a partner." Isabella looked at him with disgust. "You think I'd work with you? You helped him bury my father." "I have the access codes to the offshore accounts," Arthur whispered. "The ones not on the drive. The ones where he hid the real money. $50 million. It's yours, if you cut me in." Isabella stared at him. It was a tempting offer. $50 million to restart Rutherford Dynamics properly, to ensure she never had to struggle again. All she had to do was shake the hand of a devil. She looked at his extended hand. Then she looked at the police lights reflecting off the wet pavement. This was the twist she hadn't expected. The choice between pure justice and profitable revenge. Isabella stared at Arthur Pence's sweating face. The police lights painted him in alternating stripes of red and blue, a clown in an expensive suit. He was offering her $50 million in dirty money, thinking she was desperate. Thinking that because she had worn an apron for 5 years, her morals had eroded along with her bank account. She looked at his extended hand, then down at her own hands that were calloused from scrubbing tables, but clean of corruption. "You know, Arthur," Isabella said, her voice eerily calm amidst the chaos of the arrests happening behind them. "My father taught me how to play chess when I was 6 years old." Arthur blinked, confused by the non sequitur. "Isabella, focus. We have a narrow window before the feds freeze the assets. I can get the crypto keys. We split it 60-40. In chess, Isabella continued, stepping closer to him. There is a move called a discovered attack. It's when you move a piece to reveal a line of fire from another piece standing behind it. "What are you talking about?" Arthur hissed, checking his watch. "I'm talking about the fact that I didn't just record Sterling," she said, her eyes flashing. "I recorded you too. The microphone under my apron has been running since I served you your first scotch 3 hours ago. You just admitted to knowing about the offshore accounts and the hidden debt." Arthur's face went pale. He took a step back. You set me up." Isabella smiled. "I didn't set you up, Arthur. I just waited for you to make a mistake. And you just made the fatal one. You assumed I was greedy." She raised her hand and waved slightly. 2 FBI agents who had been securing the perimeter broke away and marched directly toward them. "Arthur Pence," one of the agents shouted. "Hands where we can see them." No, she's lying," Arthur screamed as he was slammed against the hood of a police cruiser. "She's the mastermind. I was trying to stop her." Isabella watched him get cuffed without blinking. She felt a strange lightness in her chest. The weight of 5 years of silence, of humiliation, of serving drinks to the men who destroyed her family. It was all lifting. But as the police cars began to drive away, whisking Sterling Cross and Arthur Pence to federal detention, a sleek, matte black Maybach pulled up to the curb. It didn't look like a police vehicle. It looked like a predator on wheels. The rear window rolled down. Sitting inside was a man who made Sterling Cross look like a child playing dress-up. He had dark hair, eyes the color of obsidian, and a scar running faintly through his left eyebrow that suggested he hadn't always fought his battles in a boardroom. It was Dominic Hale. Isabella recognized him instantly. Everyone knew Dominic Hale. He was a venture capitalist, but the rumors said his family's money came from much darker origins in Sicily. He was a man who bought distressed companies and turned them into empires, usually by ruthlessly gutting the competition. "Get in," Dominic said. His voice was deep, smooth, and lacked the frantic energy of the night. "I'll take the subway, thanks," Isabella said, clutching the USB drive. "The subway is dangerous for a woman holding evidence that could implicate half of Wall Street," Dominic countered. He pushed the door open. "Besides, you and I have a mutual interest. I own 15% of the debt Sterling Cross just defaulted on." Isabella hesitated. She knew getting into a car with Dominic Hale was like walking into a lion's cage. But she also knew he was right. She was a target now. She slid into the leather seat. As the car pulled away into the New York night, Dominic poured 2 glasses of bourbon from a crystal decanter. He offered one to her. "To the Queen of the Night." Dominic said, a faint smirk playing on his lips. I watched the live stream. Brilliantly executed. The slave comment was the nail in the coffin, but the fire alarm, that was art. Isabella took the glass but didn't drink. "What do you want, Mr. Hale? I'm not selling the patents. Rutherford Dynamics is mine." "I don't want the patents," Dominic said, turning to look at her. "I want the player. You took down a giant with a serving tray and a USB drive. I need that kind of ruthless efficiency." "I'm listening." "Sterling was a fool," Dominic said. "But the people who funded him, the people behind the shell companies, they aren't fools. They are the Onyx Syndicate, a shadow board of investors who launder money through tech startups. You just cost them $1 billion. They won't send lawyers, Isabella. They'll send cleaners." Isabella's grip on the glass tightened. "So I'm in danger?" "You're a walking dead woman," Dominic corrected gently. "Unless you have a shield. I can be that shield. I have resources that the FBI does not." "And the price? Marriage," Dominic said calmly, taking a sip of his drink. Isabella choked on the air. "Excuse me." "A strategic alliance." Dominic clarified, his eyes dancing with amusement. "Strictly business. If you are my wife, you are untouchable. The syndicate knows the rules. They don't touch the Hale family. In exchange, you use your genius to help me fix the tech sector of my portfolio. We run Rutherford Dynamics together. 50-50. Isabella looked at him. He was handsome, dangerously so. But more than that, he was offering her the one thing she needed to survive the hornet's nest. She had just kicked power. "I don't need a husband, Dominic," Isabella said, her voice hard. "I need a partner." "Then let's redefine the terms," Dominic said, extending a hand. "Partners. But to the world, we are the new power couple. It keeps the wolves at bay." Isabella looked at his hand. It was the second hand offered to her that night. The first was corruption. This one felt like destiny. She shook it. "Deal. But I drive." 3 months had passed since the night of the gala. The media called it the Red Wedding of Wall Street. Sterling Cross was awaiting trial without bail. Cross Industries had been dissolved, its assets cannibalized. From the ashes, Rutherford Dynamics had risen like a phoenix. Isabella sat in the corner office that used to belong to Sterling. She had burned his furniture and replaced it with sleek modern minimalism. But the victory tasted like ash. Dominic had been right. The attacks had started immediately. First, it was cyber attacks on their servers. Then, a gas leak at their manufacturing plant in Jersey that nearly killed 3 workers. The Onyx Syndicate was coming for her. Isabella stood by the window looking out at the skyline. She wore a tailored crimson suit, no more aprons. The door opened, and Dominic walked in. He looked tired. He had been using his private security, a euphemism for his family's enforcers, to guard the perimeter of her life 24/7. "We found the source of the sabotage," Dominic said, tossing a file onto her desk. "It's not just the syndicate. Someone on the inside is feeding them access codes." Isabella opened the file. Her heart stopped. The photo clipped to the personnel file was of Liam, the sweet 22-year-old bartender who had warned her about Sterling, the boy she had hired as her personal assistant because she trusted him, because he was one of the invisible ones like she had been. "Liam," she whispered. "No, he's just a kid." "He's a kid with a gambling debt," Dominic said grimly. The syndicate bought him for 20 grand. He let the malware into the system last night. Isabella closed her eyes. It was a bitter lesson. In the world of billions, trust was the most expensive luxury of all. "Where is he?" Isabella asked, her voice turning to steel. "My men have him in the warehouse," Dominic said. "We can handle it. You don't have to see him." "No," Isabella said, opening her eyes. "Bring him here. I want to look him in the eye." 20 minutes later, Liam was dragged into the office by 2 of Dominic's guards. He looked terrified, weeping. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I mean Ms. Rutherford. They threatened my mum. I didn't have a choice," Liam sobbed. Isabella walked around the desk. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She looked at him with the same analytical detachments she used on a balance sheet. "You always have a choice, Liam," she said softly. "I had a choice when I was starving and serving champagne to men who stole my father's life. I chose to fight. You chose to sell me out." "Please," Liam begged, "don't let him kill me." He looked at Dominic with pure terror. Dominic stood in the corner, cleaning his fingernails with a small knife, looking bored but lethal. Isabella turned to Dominic. "Let him go." Dominic paused. "Isabella, he's a liability." "He's a pawn," Isabella corrected. "And you don't win the game by capturing pawns. You win by capturing the king." She turned back to Liam. "You're fired. You will leave this city. If I ever see you again, I won't stop Mr. Hale." Liam scrambled out of the room, sobbing his thanks. "You're soft," Dominic grumbled, holstering his knife. But there was a look of admiration in his eyes. "I'm not soft," Isabella said, walking to the chessboard she kept on her coffee table. She moved a white knight. "I'm using him. The syndicate thinks Liam is their mole. They don't know he's burned. So I slipped a tracker in his pocket before he left." Dominic's eyebrows shot up. "You did what?" "He's running scared," Isabella said. "He's going to run straight to his handlers to beg for protection. And when he does, he's going to lead us right to the head of the syndicate." Dominic laughed, a rich, genuine sound. He walked over and kissed her forehead. It was the first time he had touched her affectionately, and Isabella felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with business. "Remind me never to cross you, Mrs. Hale," he whispered. "It's Ms. Rutherford," she corrected, though she didn't pull away. "Now get the car. We have a meeting to crash." The tracker on her phone was blinking. It was stopped at a location in the Hamptons, a private estate. "That address," Dominic frowned, looking at the screen. "That belongs to Senator Thorne." Isabella froze. Senator Thorne, the man she had served drinks to at the gala. The family friend who had spoken at her father's funeral. The betrayal cut deeper than she could have imagined. Sterling Cross was just the executioner. The man who signed the death warrant for her father's company was his best friend. "Load the car," Isabella said, grabbing her coat. "And Dominic. Bring the heavy artillery." Senator Thorne's estate was a fortress of white marble overlooking the ocean, but it wasn't built to withstand Isabella Rutherford. She didn't knock. Dominic drove the Maybach straight through the wrought iron gates, shattering the lock. By the time Thorne's private security reached for their radios, Dominic's men had already neutralized them. Isabella kicked the library doors open. Senator Thorne sat behind his mahogany desk, sipping scotch. Liam was cowering in the corner, looking like a ghost. Thorne didn't even stand up. "Isabella, you have your father's flair for the dramatic." "Don't speak his name," Isabella said, marching to the center of the room. "You were the syndicate. You funded Sterling to destroy my family, so you could buy the patents for pennies. It was just business." Thorne sighed, reaching for a button on his desk. "I've called the chief of police. You're trespassing. I'll have you buried in a cell before sunrise." Isabella laughed. It was a cold, terrifying sound. "You think I came here to arrest you, Senator? I learned my lesson. The law doesn't touch men like you." "Then what?" Thorne sneered. "Are you going to shoot me?" "No," Isabella said, pulling out her phone. "I'm going to make you poor." She cast her screen to the massive TV on the wall. A bank transfer bar was already at 99%. "My team used the access codes Liam provided to reverse engineer your laundering network," Isabella said calmly. "We found everything. The offshore accounts, the campaign funds, the hidden caches." "You can't touch that money," Thorne yelled, standing up. "It's encrypted. Encrypted with my father's tech," Isabella corrected. "And I wrote the back door." She tapped execute. "I just donated $4 billion, the entire liquidity of the Onyx Syndicate, to the Global Workers' Relief Fund. You're not just broke, Thorne. You're in debt." Sirens wailed in the distance. Real police this time. The FEC audit reports Isabella had leaked 10 minutes ago were already trending worldwide. Thorne slumped into his chair, defeated. "You're a monster." "I'm a waitress," Isabella said, turning her heel. "And I just cleared the table." She walked out into the cool night air, Dominic at her side. As the police cruisers swarmed the driveway to arrest the senator, Dominic leaned against the car, a smirk playing on his lips. "You gave away $4 billion, he said. "We could have kept it." "I have my company. I have my name," Isabella replied. "That's enough." Dominic stepped closer, the danger of the night fading into a magnetic tension. "And what about us? The contract says we stay married for a year for your protection. The threat is gone." Isabella looked up at him, the ruthless billionaire who had become her shield. "Well," she whispered, a playful smile touching her lips. "Breaking a contract is bad for business." Dominic grinned and pulled her close. "Very bad for business." He kissed her, then a promise of a powerful future. As they broke apart, Isabella looked directly into the camera. "They told me to know my place," she said triumphantly. "So I bought the whole building." Wow. What a satisfying ending. Isabella didn't just defeat the villain. She dismantled the entire system and found a powerful partner in the process. It just goes to show, never underestimate someone based on their job or their uniform, because you never know who is really holding the keys to the kingdom. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, justice, and billionaire romance, please hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel grow. Did you think Isabella should have kept the $4 billion? Or did she do the right thing by donating it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next dramatic episode. We have a werewolf romance story coming up next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.